Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some evil. This society needs a spectacle.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 22nd of April 2023, we look at liability and we ask whether the Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines has become a liability to the people of St Vincent and the Grenadines. The Cambridge Dictionary defines liability as something or someone that causes a lot of trouble, often when that person should be helping you. And the Collins Dictionary states that if you say that someone or something is a liability, you mean that they cause a lot of problems or embarrassment. Those definitions tell us that if something or someone is a liability, that something or someone causes trouble. If someone is a liability, that someone causes problems, a lot of problems. If someone is a liability, that someone causes embarrassment. At the recent 2-day regional symposium in Port of Spain, Trinidad, when the heads of CARICOM countries and others met to discuss the challenge of the escalation in crime facing the region, the Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines made utterances which caused consternation, sniggering, ridicule, and embarrassment to the people of St Vincent and the Grenadines. Some of his utterances have become the subject of memes across social media. It is with that in mind and the definitions of liability why we, here on A View from the Outside, ask whether the Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines has become a liability to the people of St Vincent and the Grenadines. One of the utterances of the Prime Minister is that some men commit crime because, and I quote, they associate with young women, some cases beautiful young women who are high maintenance, and they have to rob and steal and kill and deal with drugs in order to maintain them. Everybody here knows what I'm talking about here is the absolute truth. Everybody knows it. Unquote. Those words caused many to wonder about the basis of the Prime Minister's utterances. What evidence did he present to support such an assertion? Was he projecting? Many have asked, and many are asking, whether such utterances have come from a place of experience, personal experience. Is the Prime Minister saying that is what is happening in his country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines? And in fact, if that is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, how many crimes are associated with such high maintenance women? Of course, the Prime Minister did not say. Many are asking whether the Prime Minister was using cheap talk to solicit laughter and to appear popular. He described what he said as, quote, the absolute truth, unquote. Whose truth, it has been asked? And what makes it the absolute truth? Is it the mere fact that he says that it is the absolute truth that is in fact the absolute truth? It has been asked why the Prime Minister has chosen to blame women for the crimes that men commit. Are women his easy target? Was it another misogynistic way of choosing to abuse and disrespect women? As far as that is concerned, gender expert, former head of the Institute of Gender Studies at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Gabrielle Hussein, rejected the Prime Minister's utterances. She retorted, and I quote, "We need to move away from blaming women for what men do," unquote. The Prime Minister's utterances also have many asking whether he deliberately used and often uses such talk to divert the discussion from the reality of the true crime situation and other things happening in his own country, St Vincent and the Grenadines. Are his utterances used to hide or divert the conversation away from the assertion that St Vincent and the Grenadines has a rape culture? Are his utterances used to hide or divert the conversation away from the high incidence of domestic abuse and child molestation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Are they used to hide or divert the conversation away from the discussion of people trafficking taking place in the country, including the conversation of the Parliament girls, including Yogi Farrell? Are they used to hide or divert the conversation away from the record number of murders or homicides taking place in the country? Are his utterances used to hide or divert the conversation away from the fact that a high percentage of murders remain unsolved in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Are his utterances used to divert the conversation away from the fact that the country is being awash with cocaine and other drugs, other illegal drugs? Especially when St. Vincent and the Grenadines boasts of having some of the strictest checks at the ports of entry? Are such utterances used to divert the conversation away from the identities of the drug lords in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Are they used to hide or divert away from the fact that the country is awash with guns and gun-related crimes? Are they used to divert away from the identities of those who bring in the illegal guns into the country? Are those utterances used to divert the conversation away from the fact that a citizen of his country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, was shot on his own private property by those who continue to enjoy the protection of the state and the spoils of his government? Are they used to divert the conversation away from the fact that he sits at the top of a government that has caused untold problems to hundreds of teachers, police officers, nurses, customs officers, and other public servants? Are they used to divert the focus away from the fact that his government sacked these workers for having exercised their constitutional rights? Are they used to divert the focus away from the fact that these workers are made to endure more anguish and financial woes as his government pursues protracted litigation while these workers are kept unemployed? Are the utterances used to hide or divert away from the conversation of the high level of corruption in the country, where millions go missing from the country's purse, and where there is no accountability, no regular audited accounts shared with the people in accordance with the constitution of the country? Whatever the Prime Minister's intentions are, one thing that is clear is that he is succeeding in making St. Vincent and the Grenadines a laughing stock around the region and the wider world. He debases and humiliates the citizens of his country, and he shows the utmost disrespect for women. In the process, it begs the question whether he has now, more than ever before, become a liability to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Another of the utterances of the Prime Minister which raised eyebrows to the point of embarrassment is when he encouraged the heads of the other CARICOM countries not to involve the opposition to assist in solving the crime situation in their respective countries, in solving the crime situation which is plaguing the entire region. Here was an event which involved crime experts, police commissioners, and other civil society leaders from around the region, with a common goal of trying to come up with a plan to combat crime and violence as a public health issue in the region. Yet, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines seemed intent on encouraging division among the group. One would have thought that such a forum was one where unity would have been encouraged. At the symposium, the Prime Minister also ridiculed the church's way of preaching. He said that they, and I quote, have to preach better in order to get my attention, unquote. With such utterance, the question must be asked here, have the churches in St. Vincent and the Grenadines listened? Are the leaders and the congregational members of these churches listening? Do they know that they were the subject of ridicule in the presence of the heads of other CARICOM countries and others? Do they care? Are they going to hold the Prime Minister accountable for what is perceived as blasphemy? Churches, church leaders, church members, it is up to you to determine whether the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has become a liability to you and to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Has he become an embarrassment to you? In other countries, where a leader or senior figure becomes a liability, action is taken to ensure that such a leader or senior figure is removed from the position to ensure that they no longer remain such a liability. In the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, became a liability to the Conservative Party and by extension to the country. And as a result, he was removed from being Prime Minister of the country. His immediate successor, Liz Truss, did not last long before it was decided that she was a liability and she too was removed just like Boris Johnson was. As recent as yesterday, Dominic Raab, the Deputy Prime Minister and Lord Chancellor and the Secretary of State for Justice here in the United Kingdom, after having been found guilty of bullying senior civil servants, had become a liability and was made to resign his post. In Scotland, the former Scottish Prime Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, felt that had she stayed on longer, she would have become a liability. She resigned from being the Prime Minister. She resigned voluntarily. The former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, felt that if she had stayed on longer, she would have become a liability. she voluntarily resigned. When someone, including a prime minister, becomes a liability, it is for that person to recognize it and step down. If that person fails to go voluntarily, then it is for the people to make that decision for them and to let them know that the country cannot put up with such a liability. Vincentians, we are better than this. Malcolm X said, "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything." Vincentians, the ball is in your court. Until next week, this is Brereton Horne with a view from the outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. You can also get us on Facebook at A View from the Outside and on YouTube at JMB Horne. Have a pleasant Saturday, have a wonderful Sunday, and have a productive week ahead.